What's going on? Welcome back to another show of the Canucks Conversation. Either or. I like to call it episode. We're talking about a show here live on YouTube as well. My name is Chris Faber. Joining me here on Fridays, brought to you by the great folks at Zephyr Epic. And I tell you what, I got a special one today to show off because you saw me adding to the collection before Harm. I almost called you Quads. Adding to the collection here before because I'm getting closer to the 151. Shout out to the great folks at Zephyr Epic. And because this is a green card, it looks crazy. The Pinsir, the Jungle Edition Pokemon card, adding it to the set right after this. But we are here, the Canucks Conversation. Now, I tell you what, we like to screw around on the show off the top. Sometimes I go for 15 minutes talking about whatever. We're not going to do it today. We have so much to get to, and I think we've learned from past episodes here, Harm. You and I, we seem to go overtime too much on these, and it's funny because we don't ever get to that thing on the ticker. But I do want to mention the person who loves the ticker, our producer, Aaron, Nation Network Aaron, filling in today for Alex, who's on vacation, enjoying some time with his family. So we're happy he gets that. But we're also here to talk about a lot of stuff going on with the Vancouver Canucks. First, one piece of business to handle. Montana's. Bring it up. Bring back the viewing party to Montana's Daily Deals. We've been home during the pandemic and lost out on the good times going out with friends. Montana's is bringing back the viewing party, Harm. Head down to Montana's where the game is always on and the Daily Deals keep you full. Monday, half-price wings. Tuesday, kids eat for $2. Wednesday, all you can eat ribs. And they got that new comfort menu out there. It is just beautiful. We've crushed the spinach dip in the past. We're going to be out on at Montana's, I think, in about 2 weeks' time as well. So Quads and I are going to go crush some Montana's. Maybe we'll bring you along. You're a Montana's guy. You like a good spin dip. What's your favorite appetizer of all time? Like you're going out and it's just like, listen, I'm not going out to have drinks all night. I'm going out to just like get a couple appies and just have a good time. What's the one that you love to see on a menu?
I'm actually more of a main course type of guy. I'm not a huge appy guy, but if I'm going for appy, anything related to like good quality bread with a good dip, like like Earl's spinach dip.
Yep,
that's always a classic go-to.
So a spin dip, you said bread. You're like a pita bread guy instead of chips because there's the option for chips. Spin dip, you're going with like a bread or like a pita.
I'm not picky, but I like a good quality bread.
That's what we did at Montana's when we did the spinach dip. We did half and half like the pita corners and half of the chips because I like a little bit of either or. Yeah, let's get to it. We got a lot to get to. A lot of stuff today, Harm. We were both at the rink. We were both there for the Bruce Boudreau availability. And I tell you what, I mean, we all know this. This is the end of Bruce Boudreau is what it feels like. There were some questions today about him being able to kind of take in the back-to-backs here, as there's a lot of rumors that Rick Tocchet is going to be taking over this Canucks coaching staff as of Monday. Listen, it's not set in stone yet, but you could kind of hear it from the vibe today. Bruce was also not on the ice for morning skate today. We'll get the audio up here that I thought was pretty funny of Bruce saying that he fooled us. So we'll get that. You can get that set for us, Aaron. But it was kind of funny, you know, some smiles, absolutely, in the conversation with Bruce this morning, but also some emotion as well. As I don't know, it's a spot that's difficult for him because he's been around this game for a long time. He's not getting any younger. He's had an opportunity to coach all around the league. He's still a great coach in a lot of people's eyes. It's just difficult here. But I want to quickly play just something fun that we had with Bruce right off the top, as he came out and said that he fooled us. As he didn't take, like I said, he wasn't on the ice for morning skate today. Here's how it started today in the media availability with Bruce Boudreau.
Fooled you, eh?
I mean, still to be able to have a smile on this guy's face with what he's been going through, what this organization has done to him, it shocks me. It's beyond me how he's still able to come out and have a smile on his face. And we saw a little bit of that today.
Yeah, and when he started getting questions about what could this next couple days mean for him, potentially his last couple coaching the Canucks, you could tell that the emotion was really starting to become overwhelming. The initial thought of him just looking at how much the game has given him thinking about even towards the end when he was asked specifically about like what it all means, he was choking up, right. And he's like politely had to end the availability. For her to see someone like Bruce Boudreau, a gem of a human being, and throughout this entire time, he hasn't thrown anybody under the bus.
No.
he's handled it with pure class. To see him treated this way, one of the winningest head coaches of all time, it's such a shame. It's so disappointing. I mean, think about where this organization was at about 13 months ago when he took over behind the bench. This organization was in the exact tire fire position they are today. And he was able to bring in a fresh air of positivity. He was able to instantly turn around the vibes. He was able to help Elias Pettersson find his game again. Right? That alone was huge. He was able to we saw an evolution with Hughes and Pettersson where Boudreau gave these guys an opportunity to embrace defensive responsibilities, to be out there defending leads, to be out there killing penalties. And that whole Bruce There It Is run, it's just so, for me, stepping back and looking at the situation, seeing a man that positive, with that many good vibes, with that much regular season success, for him to over the last couple months look like a shell of the man that he is today, look so beat down, look so tired, look so worn out, be treated this way, that just tells you what it's like to be a part of the organization right now. And it's so incredibly sad to see him go through this. Like, it's really, really tough, especially because, like, think about it from Boudreau's perspective. Given his age, he may not get another head coaching opportunity in the NHL again.
Yeah.
For it to end on this note, for him to be publicly embarrassed, for him to be coaching for weeks knowing that he's going to be replaced, that the replacement has already been lined up, to have that all publicly confirmed, because it's one thing to, in the back of your mind, know that, all right, I'm probably going to be let go at some point, but this is a step further. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where you have a president of hockey ops saying, yeah, I'm talking to potential replacements for my active head coach.
And I have been for 2 months, he said.
Exactly.
That's what Rutherford said on Monday. We haven't talked, you and I, here on the show since that, so we'll get to that later on in the show as well. I just thought that, to add to what you're saying, you're right. There's a different situation where, listen, the president coming out and saying that they don't like the structure of the team and everything,
that's
one thing. You're right. But to openly hear, I've seen a lot of people talk about this. I don't think that they can ever mention another moment where a president or a GM or somebody in that type of role has openly said they've been having conversations with the question that was asked of Rutherford that day was about talking to replacement head coaches. And he openly gave an answer that was honest. That's something that Jim Rutherford, we see, has done. And I want to get to the quote that you tweeted this quote out, but I just found that the way it ended there with Bruce today too was a little difficult as well. He was emotional. I thought he was, Bruce was able to.
He was on the verge of tears.
Yeah, he was able to inconsent his emotions and leave the media availability by not talking much about the situation, about being an NHL head coach. But you could just feel that the question there at the end was, there was a couple ones. I think Drance asked about, are you able to kind of look at these back-to-back games? He wasn't able to. And that's the question. That's the quote that we'll get to in just a minute here. But also at the end, just to kind of, that was a tough moment for him at the end there. And it's because of how this organization has treated him. And he was asked about it just earlier this week. Like, do you think the organization has treated you fairly? And he's saying, yes, you're right. Like, he didn't want to throw anyone under the bus. It's like you said. So difficult one. Also, I want to play the quote. Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I'll say is I understand why management wants to make the change. Of course, they want to bring their own guy in.
Yeah.
Boudreau wasn't really their guy. This was mostly an ownership hire. But if you're going to make that change, this should have happened right away. As soon as you knew you were done with Bruce as a head coach, right? Whether it would have been late October, November, December, even if you don't have a replacement lined up, just let him go. Don't drag him out through this process. Don't let him walk into the building every morning. Imagine you were in that situation. You're having to coach this team and how do you put your heart and soul into coaching a team, literally knowing that you're going to be fired any day? Like, there's zero hope. There's zero chance. It's a near impossible task. They should have let him go early, let Mike Yeo take over as an interim, and then whenever they can find the replacement, whether it's Rick Tocchet or somebody else, whenever it makes sense, then you sort of make that change. This is such a weird in-between period to kind of do it as well. I don't mean to go off into tangent here, but you're at a point now where you're making this coaching change where it's too early, it's too late to save the season. And it feels too early to where you wonder if it's going to ruin the tank. Like, I understand the rationale if you want to bring in a guy like Rick Tocchet, let him implement his systems, let him start building that culture. You don't need more than 10 to 15 games to start establishing that. Why do you need, there's how many games left on the schedule? Probably 30, maybe more. There's a huge chunk of the season left. And we all know that you sometimes see the big coaching bump. We saw it with Boudreau, right? You'll have teams go on this run, especially a team like the Canucks that still has, despite where they are in the talent, a lot of pieces to work with. And so even from an organizational standpoint of making the change, there's nothing in this process that has made any sense to me. And you can rest assured that everybody around the league knows how Boudreau is being treated. Knows and sees all these headlines about the Tanner Pearson
and are hearing
injury.
more than us. We're hearing a lot for sure, and people have our sources, but these sources that people are talking to are coming from people in the league that are likely hearing more than us. So I think that our thought perception of how the treatment has gone of Boudreau is one thing, because we're tying together what people are talking about, but these people that are actually talking about it to each other, they probably even know more than this. I mean, I found it interesting to hear Bruce talk about like his wife talking to him today, sending him texts like, "Are you okay? What's going on? Like, why aren't you on the ice?" Like, it's
also at a
tough spot.
time when one of your other best soldiers, Bo Horvat, your
Mhm.
captain, is on the way out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's happened concurrently. Two of the best people in the organization, and I get it, right? Like, at this point, you have to trade Horvat, but you didn't have to in the offseason if you had
And
moved Miller. And it's just so sad seeing two of the best people in the organization sort of like departing at a time of crisis. It's hard to find hope. Like, it really is. Like, again, I'm a big guy on, you want to find positivity, you want to find light at the end of the tunnel. But man, it feels like there's some drama, some controversy, something going wrong with this organization every other day. I mean, how many times all these national insiders, like whether it's on their podcast, shows, insider trading, whatever, the Canucks are a daily talking point.
Yep. Off the top of the show.
And it's, like, you don't want to be in that position where the whole league's talking about you day in and day out for negative reasons.
There was a time where when Jim Benning was the GM, he had to give like an extra year and an extra $1 million on top of every player that felt like it was coming here. Maybe that was a decision on his point, but the way that the league is going to look at this Vancouver Canucks organization for how much Bo Horvat has carried water for this team, how much Bruce Boudreau has had to deal with this team. Think of all the stuff that Travis Green had to go through as a head coach, how much he had to answer for this organization.
He was having to explain all the Jake Virtanen stuff.
So why would anybody want
coach?
to?
Nobody else took accountability for that.
You said this last week on the show that this used to be a destination. Now it's the complete opposite of that. Like, you can clearly make the argument of somebody who is just like, if all the offers are on the table and it's a bunch of these bottom feeder teams, the Arizona Coyotes, the Anaheim Ducks, all these teams that are near the bottom, the Chicago Blackhawks, everything that's going on with that organization, you have to put the Canucks in that group from how they've treated people in their organization.
I ran into Drance and I ran into a couple players in the elevator after the skate, and we're like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And and it was just sort of like a like one of those moments where you just know, and everybody just starts laughing.
Yeah,
of, like,
nothing needs to be said in those situations. You know what's going on. We'll get to the audio because I thought that this kind of sums it all up. And this is something you tweeted out. Let's just hear the audio from Bruce Boudreau talking about, listen, I'd be a fool not to know what's going on. Go ahead, hit it, Aaron.
I don't know yet. I really, I mean, I'd be a fool not to say that I don't know what's going on, but I just, like I said before, you come to work and you realize, how great the game is. No.
Yeah, and that's kind of where Bruce got emotional about it. I think my view of it was he realized like where he at. Like, he would be a fool not to know what's going on. He knows what's going on here. And it's because of the treatment of him that's just been so incredibly disappointing for anybody who probably follows this team, for us who cover this team, everybody around the Vancouver Canucks. You should be disappointed, I think. Not only with how the play's been on the ice, but how everything around the play. I think the stuff off the ice has been more disappointing than what we've seen on the ice this year. And that's saying a lot because this is a bad team.
It's also surprising to me because when Jim Rutherford came in, considering his experience, considering his leadership, considering all the winning that he'd done, the successful organizations he had been a part of, and how they'd effectively been able to hit the reset button where you bring in a whole new front office, you bring in a whole new coaching staff. I would have never imagined a year ago that we'd be in this position again, right? I would have figured that at least you'll have a baseline level of competency, of professionalism, with the way that you treat other people, and I think that's what's most disappointing and most surprising is I actually thought that they were headed in the right direction.
Yeah,
I legitimately
there was a lot
thought,
said that would make you think that.
100%. And a lot of the initial things that they were saying, a lot of the people that they brought in, there was a lot of reasons to be positive, especially after the second half run that they went on. And I can't wrap my head around how an organization led by someone as respected and as accomplished, as experienced as Rutherford,
Hockey Hall of Famer, yeah,
is going down this path.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in here to YouTube. Lisa says they broke him, a big double middle fingers to the ownership and the GM of the Canucks for this situation. Dakota says an amazing human. Jeffro said Rutherford should have been canned or should have canned him right before that 650 interview. You know, that's kind of where the public stuff that we heard from, you know, upper management kind of started to come out of Bruce Boudreau. But something you said was so, like, I know I kind of glazed over it when you said it, but look at what he did last year for Elias Pettersson, for Quinn Hughes, to get these guys on the penalty kill, get these guys' confidence back up. And I think Corey had it in the chat there that, yes, the injury probably played a good part into that as well with Elias Pettersson kind of getting back his groove. Definitely. But have we seen the best Elias Pettersson of his career under Bruce Boudreau, right? Like, yeah. I think the argument could be there.
The other thing to keep in mind is Pettersson, he really wanted that kind of defensive responsibility to be recognized as, okay, I'm an all-around center. I'm not just a guy who can put up a lot of points. And so psychologically, that's one thing Pettersson, I think, really appreciated was, hey, I've gotten a chance on the penalty kill to play shorthanded, to contribute in ways where I think in the first half of the season, part of the problem too was, okay, I was like, Pettersson's not scoring. And I think when a player is struggling and they don't have the offense come to them, they at least want to feel like they're helping in other ways, right? Whether it's shutting down the opposition's best players, playing a matchup role, killing penalties, adding defensive value, winning a lot of faceoffs, like whatever it is, they want to feel like they're helping the cause, at least making progress. And when you do contribute in those other areas, that can at least start feeding confidence to your offense sometimes. And I think that helped kickstart the process of him kind of regaining his confidence again. I'm not saying this is all Boudreau, obviously.
No, but it's a coach has a big piece in that, a huge part in that for a player. I got some more comments I want to get to. Chat's blowing up right now. Love to see it. Corey says EP40 is also getting better on the draw. He's going to be even more of a force than he is right now. Shay says this is the hardest it's been to be a fan, and I've been a fan since the early 90s. That's including the he who must not be named years, who I think we named earlier in the show. And then as well, who do we got here? Bryce says, should we hire a banner airplane that says sorry Bruce? Feels like it's fans versus ownership and management at this point. And Dakota says the owner isn't competent. How could you expect this to go well? I think tonight there will be something because of all of this coming out, and now seeing the video of Bruce Boudreau be on the national media like Tim and Sid at Sports. I've seen that tweet going around like crazy. It's blowing up like wildfire. I think there'll be something tonight.
I really hope so. And
I really think there
will.
Yeah, absolutely.
This fan base always comes through. And I mean, this is a bit of a side topic, but against Tampa, when Stamkos scored his 500th, to see Canucks fans recognize that sort of history and be that classy at a time when so many things have gone wrong for the Canucks, and it's easy to be negative as a fan, to be able to appreciate and recognize greatness. That was awesome. And to see, and then you also saw John Cooper, BC boy, appreciating Canucks fans and saying like, this is why they're a respected fan base. This is why they're a respected market. And, Vancouver gets a bad rep sometimes in terms of being, are they toxic fan base, too negative? Oh, Canucks Twitter's crazy. And yeah, there's that element, but that's honestly born out of the negativity of the on ice product and what, like, the lack of success. I mean, do you remember the bubble?
Yeah.
Honestly, seeing the bubble, and this was when the team wasn't even in Vancouver. This was happening in Edmonton. So you didn't even get the full playoff experience, but being able to cover that playoff series, even remotely, and seeing all the positivity and all the support, it was as if, Canucks Twitter can be really divided at times, but to see everyone sort of come together, like that's a memory in terms of my career that I'm never going to forget, in terms of seeing the way that the fans got behind this city. And even in little moments like, the second half run, all the Bruce, there it is. This fan base will cling on to positivity, and that's why I'm confident that they're gonna come through and send Bruce off the right way.
If the fan base is in the same direction together, it's like it's a incredibly powerful force. Canucks fan base can be, the Twitter can be, but I mean, for the longest time with the Jim Benning years, obviously people were very split. Some people were very against the stuff right off the top. Some people also were very pro Jim Benning at the start and ended up turning on him near the end of it. You're right. Think about the moment in the bubble with Troy Stetcher scoring just after his father passed. How incredible the fan base was and support for him. Scott Rhodes, Sellies, Chris Tanev scoring the overtime goal to get them in. Like, you're right. I just think Canucks Twitter, we see it, not even Twitter, like YouTube. Everybody who's in here in the chat, everybody's listening to this podcast. When Canucks fans are together on something, it's one of the most powerful fan bases in hockey for sure. I don't want to say like in sports. Like, it's not like Canucks fan, like the Twitter's great, but I don't think it rivals like what Bill's Mafia is all about, that type of thing. But just how engaged everybody wants to be in this team going in the right direction, or even being engaged and going in the same direction, because there are certain people that still just want the Canucks to like push for the playoffs this year. And there will be a handful of people out there, or a handful of the percentage of fans that are going to be like, hey, Rick Tocchet's going to fix this year.
I don't think so.
Right?
I mean, there are always a few, but
sure.
The big thing with this fan base too is they don't, the expectation, what this fan base wants isn't even that high right now. They just want hope.
Yeah, you're right.
They don't want a quick turnaround. They don't need this team to be contending for a Stanley Cup within 2 or 3 years. What they want is at least a sense of, we're headed in the right direction for once.
Heading in a direction.
In a competent direction.
Yeah, let's get to a couple more here, and then we'll move on to Bo Horvat. Bryce has got a good one. What's worse, Canucks Twitter being separated, or Canucks Twitter joining together despite the franchise? At least we're all together, I guess, on that one. And Dakota says, as bad as the team is, it's hardwired to cheer for them, thick and thin, but it's so depressing. Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun to be just seeing this team going in the right direction. And it's like, now there needs to be so many decisions to get to that point. One of those decisions looks like it's going to be trading Bo Horvat. So let's move into that a little bit. Some more news coming out today. A lot more rumors that were dropped on the 32 Thoughts podcast. We also heard Frank Seravalli on the Leafs Report talking about it. We have a clip that we'll get to in just a second from Frank Seravalli. But let's get to some of the teams that are interested from what we've heard from rumors. This has been out there from Frank, from Rick Dollywall, from a lot of people out there talking about these teams. The Carolina Hurricanes, the Detroit Red Wings, the Seattle Kraken have been one that's popped up a lot lately. The New Jersey Devils are involved. The Boston Bruins, the Colorado Avalanche, and Minnesota Wild, all teams that could be involved in a trade. This could be done very soon. I do want to play the clip here of Frank Seravalli talking about how quick this deal could happen. The Canucks have 5 more games here before the All-Star break. Let's run the video here of Frank Seravalli talking about how quick this deal might get done.
So Horvat, O'Reilly, Tarasenko, Chychrun, Meyer, some of the bigger names. In your opinion, I'll put you on the spot. Who moves first?
Horvat. I think there's a real chance Horvat is traded before the All-Star break.
So interesting kind of update as well from some of those teams that we mentioned that could be interested. I think it was last night. Max Pacioretty, could have been 2 nights ago.
Yeah, it was last night.
Went down for the season, and the early return sounds like it's an Achilles thing. Could be very long-term for him, out for the season. The Canes could be very much looking for a replacement with that money. Canes have some pieces. I think the Hurricanes are one of the front runners for Bo Horvat in this situation. They have some prospects that would make sense. They have some draft picks that make sense. They have an extra second-round pick in next year's deal. They have some of those young players. But Harm, one of the names that I'd like to get your opinion on that I've seen out there a little bit. And we talked a little bit before the show about this, so I know which way you're probably going to go. But just Sperry Kotkaniemi is one of those players who he's locked up long term. But here's the thing, and I'm not saying it's the right move because I want to hear your thoughts on it, but he is one of those players who's 26 and under and maybe hasn't worked out with a team out of his ELC. Is that the type of player that here's the question. I'll ask it in two parts.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to ask it in one part. Is that the type of player, do you think, that this management group, because they've talked about it, is looking to target in a Bo Horvat trade here?
Yeah, that's my worry.
Mhm.
Is Kotkaniemi fits a sort of profile, right? High pedigree in terms of being a top 3 pick. Not too long ago, he showed some flashes in Montreal. The year that the Canadiens went to the final, he really came alive there. He's tall, he's lanky,
22.
pretty smart defensively.
Signed until 2030.
Yeah, cost controlled. So for all those reasons, especially because of the Canucks' immediate need to find a centerman,
Retool versus rebuild type of thing.
retool, yeah, and especially because of how hard it is to find players up the middle, I would be a little bit, I do wonder if he's the sort of player that would intrigue management. I hope they don't go down this direction because, look, is there a world where Kotkaniemi can be an effective middle six center? Absolutely.
Sure.
But I just don't think that there's enough upside there, especially when you consider the contract that he signed for. You're talking about $4.8 million for the next 8 years. What if he's not a top 6 centerman?
Right.
Like that, you're adding another expensive contract to the books for a guy who has 16 points in 45 games. He only had 29 points in 66 games last season. Now, again, I think there's room for growth there.
Sure. He scored 5 goals in the All Canada division. 5 goals in 56 games.
Yeah. So
and listen, he was 20 at the time. There's, like we said, it's just, I'm not saying he's like, I think the Canucks need to go with the youngest options, and also more, if you're going to actually target a player type, make it a defenseman. I don't even care if it's a right shot defenseman. Target a defenseman. It's 2023. You can start to have defensemen play their offside if that's the way. I look at this situation with Kotkaniemi, and I think it's like he can't be the major piece that you get back for Horvat. He can't be.
Well, also for me, mainly it's the contract. It's like how many highly paid forwards can you have, right?
Right.
At a certain point, what you need to win is efficiency. It isn't just acquiring good players. It's how well do these players perform? How much value do they add relative to the cap hits that they're on? Because if you have a bunch of good players who are paid market value or slightly above, like the Canucks do, you're not going to have enough cap space to address all of your roster weaknesses, right? That's why you look at a team like Colorado when they win the Stanley Cup. It's like they had McKinnon under $7 million,
right?
One of the best centers in the game, under $7 million. They had Bowen Byram, who led their team in 5-on-5 ice time in the Stanley Cup final on his entry-level contract, leading the blue line in 5-on-5 minutes. You look at the contract that Devon Taves was on, an absolute steal. I'm trying to pull up the exact cap hit now. $4.1 million for a top pair defenseman.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about Valerie Nichushkin, an absolute beast in the playoffs. What was like he was making pocket change, right?
Yeah, absolute
Lekkerimaki acquired at the deadline, making pocket change. So you look at the contracts that they had. Even Kadri, he scored 87 points in 71 games. It was the last year of his deal where he wasn't making that much money. And when I look at the Canucks, the biggest problem that I see in terms of this retool and this idea of how do you contend is I don't see where you're going to find hyper efficient contracts, because even your best players, Elias Pettersson is going to be due for his massive pay raise in 2 years. He's not going to be on the McKinnon like under $7 million sweetheart contract. JT Miller's already at $8 million. Connor Garland and Brock Besser are on inefficient big ticket contracts. Ilya Mikheyev, he's probably been worth his contract this season. He's just under $5 million. So you're going to tack on like Kuzmenko is one of your most efficient deals right now. What you're going to re-sign him on a bridge for around $6 million, and then what you're also going to bring in Kotkaniemi for a shade under.
How are you going to rebuild your defense core?
Exactly.
That? I think that's the question. That's the
so
huge
I hope
question.
not. I mean, I'm not like, to be very clear, I'm not trying to like preemptively rip into management, right? Because look, I don't know exactly how they feel about Kotkaniemi.
Sure.
I just hope that that's not the direction they're leaning in. Look, if Kotkaniemi was in this situation, except it's like he's 2021 and he's off on his ELC and he's going to be cheap to resign, then you go, okay, like why not? Right? Like why not have him be one of the pieces that you target? But I it does worry me.
Under $5 million though, for a guy who's going to play 3C for you. I mean, it's not the craziest idea. You have this for a long time, but here's the problem that I worry about.
It's not that it's a. Let me clarify. It's
this
not
current
that it's a
spot
bad.
that he's at.
It's not that it's a bad contract. It's just that you can only have so many. Like you can't keep paying market value for everybody. You can't just go, that's a fine contract. That's an okay contract. You need deals. Like when you acquire a player back in a Horvat trade, what you need is the sort of player that you acquire and say, okay, he's in the future, he's going to be a core building block piece, and he's going to do it when he's on his entry level contract, or he's going to do it when he's super cheap, when he's hyper efficient, as opposed to, well, he's already market value. Right. Because again, if he fulfills his potential, like that may not end up being a bad contract.
No, that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, I can see this being, listen, he's locked for 8 years at under 5. This feels like one of those deals where we say, hey, maybe the Canucks need to take a risk on a guy, not even necessarily a risk, but kind of this contract feels a little bit riskier than it could be for Kotkaniemi, and that could go one of two ways. That could go good, that could go bad. I feel like the base that he's at right now, you'd think it's kind of bad, but if he's scoring 20 plus goals and winning a good amount of faceoffs, being on the penalty kill, doing certain things for you, but it's like he's not doing all that now. So you have to ask a lot of what his game already is to get him to the point where you're starting to see value in it. But it is interesting because it's like, man, he's locked up for a long time. He's 22 years old. It's not like he's a bad NHL player. He's going to help an NHL team. Value. And even right now, like, I know he's not blowing away his contract, but it's not like he's a negative asset, I don't think either, right? Like, you're not at that point. And I think with the contract, it's interesting to see because he's signed till he's 30. So it's like you're getting all this prime under $5 million. The cap's going up quite a bit in that term of the 8-year contract. I mean, that, like, it's, but at the same time, like, here I am again trying to just find a positive way to like.
Well, it's also just like it's like I look at. It's fine in a vacuum, right? The problem is it doesn't make sense in the bigger picture scheme of what this team needs. It's just like, for example, I look at Elliott Mikheyev and I'm like, okay, on the balance, free agency wise, that's actually not a bad contract.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're a team in the right situation, 4.75 for Elliott Mikheyev, considering the offense that he's brought, considering the speed that he's brought, you're like, okay, that's not bad value. But it's the context of how does that contract fit with the other, with all of the other money you have tied up in your forwards, the lack of cost certainty there, and more importantly, the fact that you're not in your window to win now.
And here's what I would have to say from the organization of everything we know. And listen, I've talked about this a lot in the last couple of weeks here. We have to judge the organization on what plans they're telling us. Kotkaniemi is exactly in the plan that they've told us. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I can seriously see them being, this is the type of player they want to target. I saw Corey had a proposition out there. If you're getting Scotty Morrow in a deal with him, and let's just say a second round pick. I don't think you're getting Kotkaniemi, Morrow, and a first. So let's say you're getting Kotkaniemi, Scotty Morrow, a second round pick in next year's draft in exchange for, I'm going to say Bo Horvat, but I'm also going to say Aiden McDonough, because I have a feeling that when Horvat gets dealt, if it's a team like Carolina, Boston, Colorado, one of these teams that is in a contending now mode, I think the Canucks can gain a little bit of value by having McDonough in that deal, and I'm not 100% sure the Canucks are going to be able to sign McDonough. As much as he's going to be a prospect that'll help them right now, I don't think the Canucks are 100% sure they're going to be able to get him. So I think having him in this trade, go to a team that he can contend with, I think that helps a little bit. Is that a deal you might look towards? Because you're getting the right D that you want, but now you're taking that risk of Kotkaniemi, which I understand what you're saying. And listen, that's like a deal to me that I can see. And Corey brought it up. Shout out to Corey in the chat there for that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad value.
No, I think there's some real potential for the value.
I would need to feel really confident in my scouts and in my hockey operations department
about Morrow or Kotkaniemi.
Kotkaniemi.
Okay.
I need to, because Morrow, I think we all know he's a decent prospect. He's not an A grade prospect.
He's a high B though.
He's a high B. He's got right shot with second pair upside if everything hits.
Very offensive guy, can move the puck very well.
But there's also a chance that he maybe only ends up being a 4.56.
Yeah, I mean the high end for him is a Tyson Barrie type, right?
Really high end.
Very.
I don't think that's.
No, I don't think he's becoming that. I think. Yeah, I think he's an NHL player.
Yes,
I think he's an NHLer.
Yeah,
I think he's an NHLer potentially after this season.
Yeah.
He's also still very young. I think he's just 20 or even 19 right now. So he's a player you have to target in this deal, and you have to target him. Like I look at that trade, and I think there's more value in Morrow than there is in Kotkaniemi in a trade, in my eyes.
Probably, yeah.
For certain teams, maybe not. For the Canucks, I think so.
And again, like this is where the contracts are different, right? If a guy like Morrow were to come in and hit, and he's a top 4 righty, right? Like let's say second pair righty.
Sure.
If he hits, he'd be doing that while he's on his ELC. And because a player like that,
because he has no deal. You can sign him at the end of this season, and you'll have the rest of the season and 2 more on an ELC.
Also,
that's huge. That's huge for a rebuilding team.
Yeah,
a retool team. I don't know if it's as huge. Sort of, I guess.
You still need it. Like,
listen, an ELC is an ELC. You're gonna like that.
ELC. Contending teams need young players on ELCs.
Right.
So with more, the other interesting thing too is, as an offensive guy, he may not immediately get the huge point totals right away, especially when you have a guy like Quinn Hughes running the first power play unit. So you may be in a spot where even after his ELC expires, it may not be that expensive to lock him up.
Yeah.
Long term,
even 4-year type thing. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. So the point is, you're going to get a lot of years where it's like this guy's cheap and he fits the most important position of need. But again, in terms of evaluating the proposal as a whole, look, I haven't scouted Kotkaniemi every game that he's played since he's been in Carolina. I have a good idea of what he is right now. I don't have a great idea of what are the odds that he's going to hit his potential. Has he hit a wall? And so that's where, as an organization, you'd have to put a ton of research in, because if you believe that he can be a second line, grow into being a second line centerman.
If he's your 1-2, if you believe he's the 2 punch to your Elias Pettersson,
then it's like, okay, that intrigues you then for sure. But you'd have to be really confident about that.
Yep. And I think you have to do a lot of different things where, like, what does he look like with JT Miller as a winger? What does he look like with certain players as a winger that are going to, like, listen, JT Miller's going to be here for a long time. You got to think where he fits with a guy like that. So we'll move on from this one a little bit, just kind of sticking with the Horvat situation, but just moving on from the Carolina stuff. Quick question and then a long question for you, Harm. 5 games until the All-Star break. Back-to-backs tonight. A lot of rumors going around. Does Horvat sit this weekend?
It's a good question. I think there is still... I don't think we're at that point yet where they do that. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know how the organization is viewing that right now. I haven't too seriously sort of thought that through or asked around, poked around, whatever. They should be, in my opinion, if they think that they're going to get a deal done before the All-Star break. If they think there's a strong possibility of that, why not? Especially when you have, like, he's so important as an asset, and these games don't matter.
Yeah.
If anything, it helps you in what's going on with the tank.
Yep.
But
yeah, I didn't even think of that, but it definitely does.
But yeah, so
5 games until the All-Star.
I'd be a little surprised. I mean, could you get to the point where it's like next week,
for sure,
things are really heating up and a trade could be imminent, and you're looking at, okay, like let's send him out then. Like, that could be more realistic. I'd be a little surprised if that happens tonight, for example. But we'll see. And like, in terms of what should they do, I think that's what they should do, is protect the asset. Knowing Canuck luck, I wouldn't want to test that. There's nothing to begin there.
That's what I'm worried about.
He's already established that he's on this elite goal scoring tear. I mean, what is there to gain from taking that risk.
And we're not going to have a discussion about it because I do want to get to one more thing with you after the Rutherford, because this is our first time talking since the Rutherford thing. But I think we both agreed on this before the show. There's so much to gain here for this Canucks organization if they just allow other teams to talk to Horvat's camp about an extension.
Oh yeah,
it's massive.
Yeah, that's the other really sort of crucial factor that I was going to wonder about, because look, some teams will only look at Horvat as a rental, but others, when you think about teams like Detroit, even Columbus, right, where they're not winning right now, but they probably need to speed things up with the way that they have Gaudreau and Line in the fold. When you think about a team like I bet Seattle, if they acquire him, they're not really in their cup contention window yet. So I'm sure that they, like them, a team like Boston, for example.
Yep.
A lot of these clubs would look at Horvat not just as a rental, but hey, can we
Seattle, New Jersey are good examples,
and they'd probably
too,
give up a lot more.
Yeah, because
in return, like Colorado's a great example. I was having this conversation. The Avs are in town. My colleague Peter Baugh, who covers The Athletic,
he does great work. He
does great work
at The Athletic. Peter
he's
does
he's tapped in with what the Avs are doing.
Yeah.
And I was asking him, like, okay, where do you think the Avs are at? What kind of value would they give up? You know, a piece like Newhook, where do they stand? And Peter's sort of thought was a lot of it just depends on whether the Avs think they can re-sign Horvat, because they're not going to give up a guy like Newhook, for example, in as part of a package for, like, they're not going to back up the Brinks truck for a rental. Yep. They're just not positioned that way. But if they feel that they can re-sign him,
they have a hole there.
They have a hole there long term. It's a fit. All of a sudden, you're willing to give up a lot more value. And on the surface, it sounds like a no-brainer, right? Like, of course, but I don't think the Canucks have given teams permission to speak to Horvat's camp about, okay, what would an extension cost yet? And I think that was one of the holdups with the JT Miller trade too, was I don't think that they were willing to give up that permission then. And when you think about the Islanders deal falling apart at the draft table, which would have involved Miller, that's one of the first things that I wondered about, was the Canucks were not willing to sort of let teams talk about an extension.
It's like, what do you have to lose, man? I don't understand this.
But going back to the Islanders thing too, I wonder if that's the reason, one of the reasons why that deal fell apart.
Yep, I have to imagine it would be. It definitely can't hurt the deal. Right. Yeah. That's what I think. The only way I think this hurts your organization is actually the situation that played out with Miller. If you want to re-sign him, you don't want to see what other teams would be willing to sign him when he knows free agency is around. Yeah. Exactly. So, but with Horvat, listen, that, like Jim Rutherford said, their offers out there, it's below market value. He's clearly, the organization understands it. The agent understands it. Horvat understands it. What do you have to lose to let other teams talk, though? Right.
Yeah,
I think it's crazy. Kate, I want to do a little bit of overtime stuff because I want to talk Kuzmenko with you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do Betway now. Let's get the Betway up. We're going to do this nice and quick here for the Betway, and then I want to just do it Kuzmenko. We're doing a little overtime today. Aaron, you can talk to the folks. Get Nation Network to buck up for this OT for you. But let's get Betway up there real quick. Our bets of the day: Elias Pettersson or JT Miller to score a goal, -188 over on Betway. $10 bet, return you $15.33. We like our either ors for him with that. And then tonight we're rocking with the Avalanche winning over 6.5 total goals in this game, and Mikko Rantanen scoring that at +375 over on Betway. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 years of age or older. Now, overtime. Andrei Kuzmenko. There's a lot of talk about him this week. We've been on this show talking a lot about, listen, the value is going to be massive. I think it's going to be at a level where I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think, in my eyes, looking at past trade deadlines, and I understand it's a different situation because he's a guy coming over from the KHL, doesn't have the long proven history in the NHL or has playoff experience in the NHL. I'm still very set on, because of the cap value, because what he can bring offensively to a team, this is a guy who's returning you a first-round pick plus. What do you think when I say that?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you could get a late first for him in a potential deal. The other thing that I just keep realizing now is and this is obviously a bit of a we're talking about Kuzmenko. I want to quickly mention with Luke Schenn, I'm warming up more and more to the idea of, like, in my mind, I was thinking first. My initial thought was, with Luke Shen, because we've had this conversation on the show before, where we look at Shen and go, you're expecting a third, and if you get a second, you're happy with it. You take it.
Right.
Now I'm almost at a position where I think there's a narrative out there in NHL circles where, like, first let me clarify. The reason why I didn't think that initially that Shen could net this huge haul was because I was thinking, like, teams aren't going to look at him as a top 4 guy. And I still don't think teams would view him that way, but I think there's such an emphasis in the league today. There's such a strong narrative of, look at Tampa's D and Chernak and McDonough and Hedman and how big they are. Look at Montreal's top 4 D when they made it to the Cup final with Sherrod and Weber and Edmondson.
Sorry, before you go any further, it's exactly what you just said there. Teams that get to the Cup final, teams that do well in the playoffs, that's where the size comes in. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, so I wonder if there's a strong enough narrative that even if teams don't believe in Shen as a top 4 defenseman necessarily, to where I'm almost thinking, like, and I don't want to get Canucks fans' hopes up too much.
I know where you're going. You've been setting it up for like 3 minutes. Just say it, Harm.
I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm expecting a second round pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if he could get a first.
There it is. It took you long enough to get it out.
I had to preface it the right way.
Okay, fair enough.
There you go. There's some positivity.
Yeah, look at that. A good way to end the show on that. But we didn't even touch on the
Could you imagine if you? This is why you should rebuild.
Oh man,
right?
Yeah,
My
rebuild.
goodness, can you imagine if you walk out of this, walk away from this deadline, having acquired 3 first-round picks plus whatever secondary pieces you could get for Horvat?
Do you know how much excitement that would put in the fan base to look at that? Look at what it did to the Canadians on their draft day in Montreal of adding similar things, and then being able to. And Quads has mentioned this before. Hey, you're looking for that type of 20-year-old player that hasn't worked out as great on their contract.
That's not going to excite fans.
But Doc, that's what, you have those first round picks. Okay. Then you make a trade for a guy like Kirby Doc. And now you're like, wow, we've got this center who we really project to be a 2C in the future.
Yeah.
You can't do that with a 25-year-old that you traded Luke Shen for. You can't flip that guy for that. So like, that's what I think is so crazy. It's the monetizing the value is lost so much. It's like, if you were, in my eyes, like trading for picks is like trading for American dollar. And then if you want to trade for a 24-year-old, it's like trading for a Canadian dollar, where it's like, listen, you're getting $1 in the end, but you're getting a much worse dollar value-wise than you are if you actually just go with a draft pick. Because the draft pick, you can tell a person that a draft pick is going to be anything.
USD runs king.
Yeah, and I actually seen, there's been a good discussion in the chat that I haven't really brought up much, but it's talking about, listen, it was I think during the Kanyemi thing that we were saying was like, hey, he could be a 3C if you end up drafting a 2C moving forward. If you get a Leo Carlson or you get one of these guys in the top 5, like, yeah, exactly. Like, that's what a draft pick can turn into. And it's just, I look like the retool and the rebuild thing. I want to get to Kuzmenko with you a little bit, but I think
totally tanked the Kuzmenko.
I know, but the 26 and under thing, we've been stuck on it for a long time.
He's
and
27, Jim. Let him go. He's not 26 and under.
That's the other thing with Kuzmenko. It's like, even in this retool world that we've heard about from Jim Rutherford, they've said they want to add players 26 and under. Kuzmenko isn't 26 and under, but you know what he can do? He can get you players that are 26 and under. He can get you a bunch of them. He can get you he can get you multiple ones. He can get you one very good high-end one. So then you are even adding into this realm of what you've talked about of 26 and under. I love Kuzmenko. I think he's like the most fun guy to do. Have I had the most fun with him out of every player this season in media availabilities? Absolutely, and it's not even close. He's been my favorite guy to do a post game with, a post practice with, anything. I ask him a question about the black skate jersey. He goes off about how he's been playing it on Xbox for 10 years, and that's his jersey of choice. Like, I love this guy. I love talking to him in media, but I understand what this team needs to be good down the road is not a 27, 28, 29, 30-year-old Kuzmenko. It's building that into either a prospect or monetizing that pick to do something else with, to be in the younger area there. So I'm 1000% in the camp of, as much as I love Kuzmenko, he's got to be moved for this asset that's actually going to fit into what the plan that your direction is from Jim Rutherford was that he told us earlier this week. And I hope you're not going to disagree with me, because I have no time for it. Harm.
Yeah, no, I've long been in the camp of trade Kuzmenko.
where do you think the value is? Because I've heard people say a second from around the league type of situation that I've heard from. I'm still in the camp of, man, I made the comparables to seeing what some players were getting last season at that trade deadline. And Kuzmenko is blowing all of these first round picks out of the water with what he can bring and his cap hit as well.
Well, you got to be careful, though, because you can't just look at the points, right?
Sure.
Because there are, like, we see it with, I think we're seeing it even with the difference between the way Horvat's been valued around the league versus Miller. Because don't get me wrong, there was still a lot of interest in Miller and you would have been able to get a good haul back. But the number of teams that were interested for Miller that were consistently brought up versus with Horvat is a pretty big difference. And I think that, that's an understanding of, okay, it's more than just points, right? People think about fit. And with Kuzmenko, he does have a couple knocks against him in the fact that I'm sure teams will say, okay, he's been over in Europe. We've never seen this guy. His career high in games played because of the schedule over there is 58. So how is he going to look not only 82 games, but then if we're looking to make a cup run, another 20, right? Like that's almost double the sample of games that he's played in a season ever, right? So it's a big ask. And we see when Pettersson came over initially, he had the second half slow down because he just wasn't used to the physical rigors of that
24% shooting percentage for Kuzmenko, second in the league for that. So this is why I think you have to capitalize. That's another point in like not re-signing. I was capitalizing right now.
Yeah. But anyway, so I was going to say, like, you are going to have like those knocks against him. So I'm not sure. Like, I'm not like, 100% you'd be able to get a first round pick for him. I think there's a possibility.
Like Andrew Kopp got a first, a second, and a roster player. I understand that, but
you got to understand GM's like,
I get it. I know what you're saying. He's a playoff type guy.
Ben Sherratt went for like a first round, whatever, right? And it's just like he's not that great of a defenseman, but he checks certain boxes that teams look for. It's the same way with Kopp. It's like he's got size, versatility, center wing. He's excellent defensively, utility, like a lot of experience, character guy.
I hear second round pick and I'm like, okay, Jeremy Lozon went for a second round pick last year at the deadline. He had 1 goal in 53 games. How the hell is he going to be as? Though. But it's like, how can he be as important?
Because he's in the same. He's like, people view him as Ben Sherratt light. I get it. It doesn't make sense.
It drives me crazy that thought can be out there. But I understand where you're coming from. Is that can be out there from people for sure. All right, are we done?
I think so.
I think Aaron's going to be mad at us in our post show meeting here with how far we've gone. But I hope people on YouTube have been happy. It's been a great week on the show. I'm excited for what we're going to have on Monday as well. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. Harm, anything fun and exciting for you coming up at The Athletic? I'm sure there's probably something you could write about it.
Yeah, so I'm going to have
I just saw a league story of yours as well pop up on my feed too.
Yeah,
just yesterday.
Earlier this week, I did something on top 10 most improved players. But
that was a good. All right.
Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a story on the Horvat trade situation, potential contenders, trade value, that sort of thing. So Saturday morning, that's going to be up. A lot of deadline related coverage. I'm prepping for Talk It, so I'm going to make sure I'm ready to go. If that's announced, like when that's announced.
Yeah.
So we're locked and loaded. Got a lot of deadline stuff that we're planning with Drance. So excited to feed the beast, feed the Canucks fans. They need content. They deserve content.
Yeah. What do they have to talk about now? Anyways, it's got to be Harmon Dial articles over there at The Athletic.
All of our articles.
All of them. All good stuff. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Incredible week from everyone in the chat here. I know we saw a record number of listeners earlier in the week. We've seen that number keep up throughout the YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming by and being involved in the show.
So loyal.
It is so much better. Like, I know we've made this adjustment to YouTube for the whole season now. It's been 4 months at this point. Like, it's days like this and it's a week like this where I'm like, this is so much better. This is so much better. And I know that people that are just listening on the podcast, there's still way more of you guys listening on the podcast there is the YouTube. But I love being able to include this YouTube live chat from people. If you don't know and you're just a podcast listener, we're live Monday to Friday at 1 o'clock here Pacific time. Please come by the chat if you ever get a chance to do it. We'd love to hear some people that aren't normally in the YouTube chat that are just podcast listeners. If you get an opportunity, come swing by at 1 o'clock. We'd love to see you in the chat here. Everybody have a great weekend. Back-to-back Canucks games. I didn't even mention we got 2 Abbotsford games as well. So if things go real south, I'll keep you up with the clips up there on Twitter from Abbotsford. We got a lot to talk about on Monday. I didn't even get to some news that I wanted to report, but we'll get all that on Monday. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the bonus overtime here with Harm. I know that Harm's going to be like underneath the camera. He keeps doing this towards me. I know he wants all that stacks coming. So we'll get you paid, Harm. Don't worry about it. But wrapping it up, another week coming at you Monday, 5 more shows. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jim?